Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be covering port forwarding. I'm going to show you a method you could use in which basically once it's set up you could go anywhere in the world. You can go to Mongolia, Russia, you can sit on a computer and you can access your home PC from anywhere with a internet connection, which I think is an absolutely great tool, and it can be used in many other circumstances such as external FTP, SSL FTP, setting up a website, for example, running on port 80. So I'm just going to really go through the basics of it, and to sort of aid my explanation, I'm going to draw a few drawings. So we're going to start off with this really odd looking cloud, which is going to be our internet. So I'm going to draw a very nice eye there, and that's the internet. So anywhere other than your local area network. So we're just going to draw your internet line, and that's going to be provided by your ISP, so your internet service provider, whether it's BT, TalkTalk, Sky. So we've got ISP here. And then that internet line is going to be your either your router or your firewall or whatever sort of network configuration you have set up. Something's going to handle that internet line. Something's going to be sitting there and feeding that internet line into your local area network. So that could be a router. I know it's an astonishingly bad diagram of the router icon in GNS3. But I've done my best, so it's either a router or it's a firewall in whichever case. And then your router or firewall is going to feed the sort of internet, so to speak, to your computers. So I know that's a badly drawn. That's supposed to be a monitor, and that's supposed to be a keyboard. I'm not sure whether it works or not for you guys. I don't think it does. So you might have a laptop here. That was a bit better. And you might have another workstation here somewhere in your home. And this router or firewall is going to operate in a network address translation mode. And what that basically means is all these computers inside your network, so you have computer 1 here, it's on an IP address of 192.168.1.2. This laptop 192.168.1.3. This computer here 192.168.1.4. So what's that? What is NAT? Basically, we're going to send packets through this router or this firewall, and it's going to translate it, and it's going to go out to this to the internet here. Now, when the internet sends packets through, it's gonna NAT basically is gonna filter out it's gonna decide on which computer this gets sent to, depending on the packet itself. And it's also going to cater a lot for port forwarding. So we're going to decide which port goes to which IP address. So all the traffic through that specific port is going to go through to that host. So for instance, any traffic over port 21 is going to go to this computer here, and this computer here might be a well, it will be an FTP server because it's on port 21. So that's gonna, so imagine that's a FTP server here. So we have all our files on here, and we set this up with FileZilla, FTP server, and we've configured it on port 21. So you're sitting outside in the internet somewhere. If we just draw an arrow, you're sitting, you're drinking a coffee. Christ, that's an incredibly bad drawing. Sitting there out on the internet somewhere, drinking a coffee in a very well-known coffee shop. I'm not going to say any names because I don't really like coffee shops too much, but it's just an example. So you're sitting out here on the internet, minding your own business, blah blah blah. So you might want some files from this computer. Now, what you need to do is you need to access your external IP address. Now, to find your external IP address within your home network, you will need to go to. You can either go to a website called What's My IP, or you can or you should know, or if you have a static or dynamic IP address. So the majority of home users have a dynamic, we'll just close that, a dynamic IP address. So basically what that means is that IP address, your external IP address, you're presenting to the end world, you're presenting to the internet, you're saying, hi there, this is me, this is my IP address. That's going to change every so often, so that might change every day, that might change every 3 hours, that's certainly going to change every time your router is rebooted. So that's not very good when you're accessing external resources, in which case you'll need a service like no IP, for example. I'm going to go over that in another video. Or you'll have a static IP address. Now with a static IP address you might pay your ISP a certain amount of money. I know if BT is an extra £5, which is a bit of a rip-off, and you need to be a business customer, which again is a bit of a rip-off, but they will then assign you an IP address. So say in this instance we're just going to cross this out for the time being, we're going to forget all of this. Let me just cross that. Incredibly small eraser here. We'll just cross out all of this. So in this particular case we're going to say we have one IP address, we have a static IP address, we're a business customer, and we're presenting an IP address out to the world. So you're going to sit in Starbucks, and with that configured you're going to log on to your FileZilla client, and you're going to enter this IP address here. So you're going to enter like 80.196.33.2 or whatever your static IP address is. So that's going to go through the coffee shop's internet line, and it's going to access, it's going to go back to your router. So it's going to come through the internet back down to your router, and it's going to communicate with your router or your firewall and say, hey, do you have any port forwarding rules or policies for port 21? I need some FTP information. Ports are almost like languages. Sort of if two things can communicate, they need to do it in the same language, otherwise it just will not work. So anyway, back to sort of explanation. So it's going to go through the internet. It's going to say, firewall, router, do you have any policies for forwarding port 21? Yes, I do. And we're going to forward it over to 192.168.1.2, which will be this computer. This computer will then provide the information. It's going to go back through the router, and it's going to go back to you sitting in Starbucks here. So you're effectively just opening up a port and accessing the information. This can be said for any other port. So you want to remotely connect onto your desktop, you use port 3.3.8.9. So we'd configure that on the router or the firewall to forward that port over here. In which case you can then still sit in Starbucks or still sit in, I don't know, anywhere with a internet connection outside this local area connection, and you can actually open up, you can say remote and open up a remote desktop connection, and then you can enter 80.123.34.2, and that's the, remember we were speaking about static IP address, that's the static IP address that you'll be entering in your coffee shop, and you'll say connect, and then it'll run through So it's going to try it now. We're just going to cancel that for the purposes of this video. So it's going to run through the internet. It's going to go through the internet line. It's going to go back over to your router or firewall, and it's going to say, look, do you have port 3389 open? It's going to say yes, and it's going to port forward all of that traffic over to this host here, and then you will be presented with the login screen. So yeah, definitely port forwarding is certainly a really good tool to have configured on your router or firewall. It's just so easy when you're out and about somewhere and you want to access resources or you want to connect to your PC. So let me show you my router configuration and how I'd configure that in my specific case. So we're just going to log on to my specific router, which is 192.168.1.1. I'm going to be presented with credential login screen, and we're just going to connect. So I'm going to go to advanced setup. So this will obviously vary from router to router or firewall to firewall. You're just going to need to look for something like sort of LAN or NAT. It should be under. And we're just going to see in which case it's listed as NAT virtual server setup. See, a lot of manufacturers often list it not as port forwarding. I know on a lot of standard routers you'll get from your ISP, like the BT Home Hub or the Sky routers, it's certainly listed as port forwarding. So either look out for port forwarding, virtual servers, something about NAT. So we're going to I'm just going to show you an example of how to set one up. So in my particular case, I've got the user interface. It needs to come over that interface there, and we're going to select a service. So as you can see, we've already got a lot of services that we can forward. So say for Quake 3, it might run us on a specific port, and we need to open it up to run a server on our local network. SSH port 22, we might need to open that up. That's already preset in there, so it is quite handy. I often select custom service, so custom service is quite handy in that you enter your name. So I'll say external RDP. This is where we select our server IP address. Now it's not necessarily your server this is going to be running on, it could be your computer. So if we just have a look on here, I forget what my IP address is because I'm still on DHCP. So say for instance we want to forward port 3389, so the RDP protocol, over to my computer. So we'd have a look here. It's the IP version 4 address 192.168.1.51. So they've already conveniently entered in 192.168.1.51. So external port start 3389. We don't need to specify a range of ports, as we're not doing anything like SSL, FTP or anything like that. We don't need to open up various ports. It's just one standalone port we'll be accessing through. And then it'll be TCP. We apply it and we save. And now when I go to another computer outside my local area network and I connect through remote desktop, I can now enter in my external IP address, so the IP address representing to the world. I can go 80.123.4.5.53.6, and I can click connect, and that's going to open up that's going to send the protocol RDP over to my router, as I say, and that's going to then point it to my computer, and my computer will accept that connection as long as I've got it set on my computer, and it'll go, yes, you can connect, and then it'll be sent back through the internet and to wherever I'm based. So just to round up sort of what we've gone through, We've explained the different protocols. We've explained how the port forwarding works, or virtual servers, whichever you like to call it. We've explained the static and dynamic IP addresses that you will receive from your ISP. We've explained NAT. And in the next video, I'm going to go over sort of dynamic IP addresses, sort of the sort of home IP addresses you'll receive from your ISP. So in my case, I haven't got a static IP address, but I will use something like no IP just to be able to sort of keep up with the changes of my external IP address. But this will all be explained in another video. So hopefully that helps you guys. If you do have any questions, I know this can be quite mind-boggling at first. Please leave them in the comments section below, and I'll get round to them as soon as possible. Anyway, thanks guys, and I hope that's been helpful to some extent.